Imagine how amazing it would be if we all had a superpower. I'm going to be talking today about social entrepreneurs and everyday heroes, people like you and I who can change the world. So imagine if we all had a superpower. How many, by a show of hands, have ever imagined having a superpower? And don't be shy, it's just us. I have as well. I often have thought about the power to read minds, although I'm not sure I'm ready to know what you all are thinking. I've also thought about the ability to fly, being able to see the world at a bird's eye view. I've thought about being able to time travel and go back to the 1950s and meet my grandmother, who was an entrepreneur during the height of the civil rights movement. I've thought about the ability to be able to teleport. I live in Los Angeles, and it took me about 24 hours to get here to Amsterdam, and I thought how great it would be to be able to blink my eyes, shake my head, snap my fingers, something like that, and I would be here overnight. I'm sure we've all thought about these magical powers and how cool they would be, and what we could do with them. Using our powers for good, hopefully. Maybe some of us have a little bit of a supervillain inside of us, an alter ego. But most of us, I'm sure, have thought about if we had a superpower, how could we use that power to change the world and to help someone? And I often think about social problems of the world, and if I had powers, what would I use them for? If I had curative or healing powers, what if I could cure cancer? What could I do? And you might be wondering, what type of social issues could you, too, change if you had superpowers? Well, the great thing is there's a lot of problems in our lives, in our families' lives, in our friends' lives, and maybe in our communities and the world that we feel like we can't change, but I'm here to tell you you can, and you don't need superpowers to do it. But you might ask, why should I care? And you're right, you don't have to care. But wouldn't it feel good to be able to fix that problem in your life? Wouldn't it feel good to maybe cure cancer in a family member's life? Wouldn't it be amazing to address a social issue like homelessness, which is a big issue in the state of California, specifically in my town, Los Angeles? There's a lot of glitz and glamour, but there's a lot of poverty. What if you could actually ensure that no one would go hungry? All right, you don't have to care. In fact, I'm sure all of you have bigger fish to fry. I know that many of you perhaps have recently graduated or going to graduate, and you're probably often asked a very annoying question. What are you going to do after you graduate? And the cool thing is, whatever you want to do, you can do it, as our last slide said. But you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know what I want to do yet. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And that's okay. I'll be 40 next year, and I can tell you that it goes by very, very fast. So enjoy it while it lasts, and know that you will have many lives. But you all can consider a couple of things that you probably may already be doing. You can get a job, even if it's not your passion. You can continue your education at a university or a trade school. Also, you could travel the world until you figure it out. Maybe you could do a service project. Or you could always go back home, hopefully, with family or friends, and if your parents are cool with it, again, until you decide what's next. But I'd also like to propose something else for your consideration. I'd like to propose E for entrepreneurship. Social entrepreneurship specifically. Many of you might be thinking, I don't want to go get a job. I don't want to work for someone else. And I actually want to do something that's going to change the world and help others. And guess what? You can do it. You can use social entrepreneurship as a way to solve a social problem. Or, as my brother, TEDxYouth, and I like to say, become a superhero. I believe that social entrepreneurs are superheroes of the 21st century. And I heard someone snicker a little bit, but I'm going to show you how they're similar. We've all seen potentially movies like The Avengers, we've seen Wonder Woman, we've seen Black Panther. We know how the story goes. The superhero almost dies, but always wins, for the most part. There's something fueling their passion and pursuit of good, which is maybe the love of someone who's been lost. We also know that they're here to protect us, all of us mere mortals, right? But we also know that they usually are operating in a particular time or place. And that time or place is often in the past or the future. And if they don't solve that problem, that catastrophe, if they don't slay the supervillain, then guess what? We all are doomed. We know how the story ends oftentimes, right? But one of the things I want to focus on is the universe. His or her universe. The hero always has to do something within their universe. Because if they don't solve that issue in their universe, then everyone is going to be impacted. And what I'd love to propose to you today, that your universe equals your community. And very much like superheroes, social entrepreneurs usually start in their own back home, in their own backyard. And they look at solving issues right around them. And one of the things that we often think about is that social entrepreneurs or superheroes do it all by themselves. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I'm not interested in starting a business, and I don't really care about saving the world. But guess what? Social entrepreneurs need people like you. Even if you're not someone who wants to start a business, they need what I like to call everyday heroes. When you think about a superhero film, especially in the latest films that have come out, there's no one hero. There's a collective of heroes. There's a collective of, let's say, social entrepreneurs who are relying on what I call everyday people who are everyday heroes. Those everyday people use what they have, where they are, to help the superheroes. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, what do I have to use? How can I help? How can I change the world? How many of you, by a show of hands, have smartphones? Absolutely, everyone, right? And so there's a lot that we can do, but I'd like to show you an example of what a tiny hero does without a phone and with very limited resources. His name is Austin Perrine, and he's going to give us a little inspiration. So watch the screen.
He's faster than a speeding stroller, more adorable than a wet kitten, and able to get a stranger's attention with a single courtesy.
Excuse me?
This is America's latest superhero.
Don't forget to show love.
And the only superhero with the power to feed the homeless.
Now, why do you do that?
You know what, Mr. Steve? It's just the right thing to do.
Is it?
Yes.
You want honey?
By day, Austin Perrine is a mild-mannered 4-year-old from Birmingham, Alabama. But about once a week, he turns into this alter ego.
Would you like a sandwich?
A superhero set on feeding as many homeless people as possible.
Thank you.
What's your superhero name?
President Austin.
President Austin.
President Austin?
President Austin. That's his idea of what the president is supposed to do. I was like, buddy, you have no idea. But hey, I'm going along with it.
TJ says this all began when they were watching a TV show about pandas. It showed a mama panda abandoning a baby. TJ told his son the cub was now homeless.
He says, what's homeless? I said, well, it's when you don't have a home and sometimes you don't have mom or dad around.
I can tell what the follow-up question is going to be.
Yeah, are people homeless? When I was a 4-year-old, I didn't care about helping people.
I did.
I see.
Once Austin learned some people are homeless and some are even hungry, he launched this caped crusade. Told his mom and dad that he wanted all his allowance and money they would spend on toys
Here you go.
to go toward chicken sandwiches instead.
Oh, thank you, baby.
You're welcome. Don't forget to show love.
After he gives out each sandwich,
Yes.
he gives each person that same bit of advice.
Don't forget to show love.
Don't forget to show love, he tells them. And most do, immediately.
Well, thank you. It warms my heart to see him.
It'll warm anyone's heart. Yeah, he really did, man.
Raymond Boss says this kid gives him hope.
That's where it starts.
Don't forget to show love.
Everyone who meets Austin leaves with hope. Which is why, with any luck, someday President Austin won't be a superhero anymore.
Feeding the homeless is the highlight of my life.
He'll just be a president.
All right, come on, Austin.
Steve Hartman on the road in Birmingham, Alabama.
Wasn't that amazing? How many of you are inspired by that little tiny superhero, right? He's an everyday hero. And two things I want to point out about him. I was just so touched when I saw this story. One is, don't forget to show love. And we all have a little love to show. We can be kind. We can be considerate. And he also made a sacrifice. He took his allowance, however much it was, and I'm sure his parents helped him out a little bit, but he took his allowance to help someone else. And how many of us could take a little bit of something that we have to show love? We all have more power than we think, and we don't need a superpower to show love. We all have the power of our voices. We all have the power of our devices. Many of you have the power to create change, social change, right where you're sitting, right now, with your phones. You can say something nice about someone on social media, especially in a world of cyberbullying. I like to say that compliments are free, so why don't we give more of them? We all love getting compliments, and it doesn't take much to say something nice about someone. Also, we could make a minor sacrifice and volunteer our time to help someone else. And could you imagine if we lived in a world where social media could be used to change our behavior for the good? That we could actually do something with these devices to change the world. And you might think that something very mundane, like being conscientious about the clothes you purchase, like Amazon, you go on Amazon and you purchase something to wear. Do you ever think about, how did those clothes get made? Are they being made in a sweatshop? You have the power to discern what you buy, where it comes from, and make an impact. And I want to let you know that it doesn't take much to do. It doesn't take much to create change. And in fact, I don't even have to imagine a world where social media can be used to change our behavior, because I'm already a part of that world. I've been keeping a little secret from you all, and I have somewhat of a confession to make. You see, like Superman was Clark Kent, I am a social entrepreneur. And along with my brother, Voltaire Exodus, we are like all of you. We are everyday heroes. And we are here to we up the world through our app called We Up. We are using an app through social media to help people achieve their goals in life and also solve social problems. And I know a few of you laughed as I stick out my chest proudly. I don't have a cape, although I love this black trench coat. But my brother and I wanted to do more. We wanted to be more than everyday heroes. We wanted to be able to impact everyday life. And we wanted to be able to change our communities and change our world and help people who maybe don't have the resources to do so. As we think about our next nature, many of us think about the negative aspects of big data, consumerism, and even automation, but we are using it to create social change for good. Many of us are overusing social media and screen time, and there was a recent study published on NPR, National Public Radio in the United States, that said that the majority of Americans, 50% actually, are socially isolated and depressed. And you might think that that 50% is comprised of our grandparents, people who are much older than us. But guess what? That statistic tells us that it's actually people 19 to 22 years old who are the most socially isolated. And unfortunately, social media does have a play in it, the overuse. But the positive thing is that social media, if used the right way, can be used to connect us so that we're having more face time. Another negative aspect of our current nature is workaholism. But as the rise of AI comes, artificial intelligence and automation, something else will happen. People will work less, and that too will cause social isolation and depression. But like a superhero who is racing against the future or racing against the past, we as social entrepreneurs and everyday heroes can do something right now to ensure that our next nature prevents teen suicide, prevents isolation and depression. And how can we do that, you might ask? We can look at our past nature. Our past nature and previous nature was one that was very tribal. We were connected to a community. We cared for one another. We looked out for each other. Our next nature, through technology and even our current nature, has connected us in even greater ways, but disconnected us as well. And so I encourage you all to think about how all of these technologies can be used and combined with our past nature to ensure that our next nature is one that doesn't drive us further apart. You might be thinking that, well, Ramona, you're the successful social entrepreneur, and there's probably so many other people like you. You're right. I am successful, and I'm not alone. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret in just a moment, another little secret. I'm really honored to be a part of a community of other, what I like to call superheroes or social entrepreneurs who are changing the world. They come from a range of ages, ethnic backgrounds. Imani Majid is the co-founder of a food delivery app. She's actually many of y'all's ages. She is a senior in college in New York. We also have Carrie Schwimmer, who is a psychologist who's using technology like VR to help people who have eating disorders. And lastly, we have Cynthia Salim, who has a passion for fashion and sustainability, and she's created a luxury women's wear line. I'm no different, actually, than many of you. This is a picture of my brother and I, Voltaire, and our mom, Adelaide. We had the ultimate superhero in our life. Our mom. She passed on about 6 years ago, but she too was a social entrepreneur. She showed us how to actually do well by doing good. We grew up in very humble beginnings. We were raised on maybe about $14,000 US or 12,000 euros sometimes. We were homeless. We lived in a church. But our mother always said that you don't have to look poor to be poor, and you don't have to be poor in spirit. And she always challenged us to do something and give back to someone else, which is what inspired my brother and I to create We Up. And as we prepare to transition into our next nature, I leave you with these two thoughts. What's one thing that you all can do to create social change by either becoming a social entrepreneur or being an amazing everyday hero? Thank you.